Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddhaswarapananda Paramahamsa Iti Namane Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gopakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so tonight I thought we will speak a little bit on building tolerance in our lives. Yeah, it's something, it's a virtue that we all need to be cultivating. So I looked it up, and here are some definitions that I came up with. The ability or willingness to tolerate the existence of opinions or behaviour that one dislikes or disagrees with. Can you see that there's not much tolerance around these days? The capacity to endure continued subjection to something without adverse reaction. So we talked a little bit about being less reactive last week. The capacity to endure pain or hardship. Willingness to accept behaviour and beliefs that are different from your own, although you might not agree with them or approve of them. These are from different dictionaries. So as a virtue, tolerance implies that one accepts differences in people. You don't expect others to think, look, speak or act just like you. Tolerant people are generally free of prejudice and discrimination. And last one from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a spiritual work. It's a vast writing. It's wonderful. Tolerance is to patiently endure unhappiness. So I read all this and I thought there's a bit of work to be done here. But fortunately, we have this wonderful knowledge. And, you know, a lot of these sites were saying, you know, different ways to, you know, to cultivate or build this tolerance in your life. And I sort of, when I was reading through them, I thought, yeah, most of them are just a bit of a band-aid treatment, because most of these people don't even know who they are. They think that they're the body, so they're going to deal with things differently. And it's nice that people are trying to improve. I mean, during COVID, apparently one of the most searched keywords was self-improvement. So it's good that people are spending time. Some people still have quite a bit of time, they're out of work now, that they can be improving themselves. It's a really wonderful thing. But having this wisdom is just going to make it that much easier. So the first, there's a few key points I thought I'd bring up here. So the first way to build tolerance in your life is to understand that you're not the body and you're not the mind. And I know you hear it a lot when you come here. Every time I speak, I mention it at least once. And that's because we're very forgetful of this. We go about our life and we forget that we're not the body. We start to get into that bodily concept of life once again. So anything that you can do in your life to constantly remind yourself that you're not the body is going to be a good thing. So I'm just helping you, helping myself too, because I actually hear myself speaking. So I just want to read a little bit about this idea of this virtue of tolerance from the teachings of Lord Kapila, and this is from one of the purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Obviously, we have to tolerate suffering because it's all around us. One of the characteristics of a sadhu or a holy man, a spiritualist, is tolerance. Everyone is tolerant to a degree. But a sadhu's tolerance and an ordinary man's tolerance are different. This is because a sadhu knows that he is not the body. If we properly understand that we are not the body, although we may suffer, we'll not feel the suffering as acutely. For instance, if one thinks, this is my car, and they're very attached to it, He suffers more when it is wrecked than a person who thinks, oh, it can be repaired or I can leave it. It is a question of mental absorption. Because he is more attached to material objects, the materialist suffers more. The sadhu, on the other hand, takes Krishna's advice. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a really great verse here, a really wonderful verse in chapter 2, text 14. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and the disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So key word here is learn to tolerate them. We can learn. It's not something that's probably going to come to naturally. We have to learn. We have to be constantly improving ourselves, and so we can learn how to become more tolerant. So it goes on to say here, in summer we suffer. Fire brings suffering. But in winter the same fire is pleasing. Yeah, we don't like fires in summer, but we love them in winter. The fire and water, similarly in winter, water is suffering. If you've got to get into cold water and have a swim in the ocean, it's quite suffering. I mean, it's good for you, and we do it sometimes, but it's not an enjoyable experience in the middle of winter. But the same water in the summer is pleasing. It's very pleasing to get into a nice cool ocean. So fire and water are the same. They're the same in winter as they are in summer. But sometimes they're pleasing and sometimes they're not. And the more in bodily concept, the more we are going to suffer, because we're going to be more attached to everything in this material dimension. So we can actually start to learn how to tolerate the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course. So happiness in this material realm has a beginning, and anything that has a beginning has an end. And distress is the same. It has a beginning and it has an end. As it said, it's non-permanent, it's not going to last forever. So that's the good thing about it. The happiness comes and goes, but also the distress. It comes and goes. So, as we become more knowledgeable in this wisdom, when we start to more fully realise that we're not the body and mind, then we have less attachment to the material dimension and the things of this material dimension. So we suffer less. It's like we step back. We just learn to step back from it all. I actually had a real experience when I went through quite a suffering experience with my last hip replacement, and I thought, I'm going to change my attitude. I had lots of joints. I've had lots of joints replaced, and I thought this time I'm going to practice what I preach. I'm actually going to really do this mindfulness, and so the first thing I did, I didn't give it the time of day. I didn't think about it, and I didn't absorb my thoughts in this event that was going to happen. So, when I got there, it wasn't a big deal because I hadn't made it into a big deal. Yeah, so it was all my perception of it. And so I went in, and of course I took my beads, and I'd been chanting on my beads, waiting in the room. They put you in a room waiting to go in for the operation. And you're in there for a couple of hours. You sort of got to all get there at the same time. And you might be fourth in line, so you've got to wait for 4 operations before you're in, but you've got to be ready just in case someone cancels or something happens. So yeah, you wait there for hours. So I've always got my beads with me and my headphones. And anyway, on the way in, they let me take my beads in with me. It was just the first time they've ever done that. And they said, oh, that's okay. Once you go under, we'll put the beads in a bag for you. So I had my beads, and I'm just immersing myself in my meditation, and then I went under and woke up, and it's all like, oh no, here we go again. The pain, it's quite painful, and I was starting to become the victim again, as I usually had. Oh no, here we go again. It's like sort of having a baby. You forget until you have the next one. You go, oh, now I remember. It's too late then. So, you know, it was the same with the hip. I thought, oh, and this is bringing back memories. And I thought, no, I'm going to just step back from all of this. It's not happening to me. It's actually just happening to my mind and my body. And I can actually separate myself from it. So I just step back and I just, you know, watch, just like we did in our journey, you know, just watch the bodily activities going on and being aware that, yeah, there's some pain there in this hip region, but, you know, it's not really touching me at all. You know, I can be untouched by it. And so every time I started to sort of get caught up in the bodily concept again and, you know, start to become the victim again, and then I'd pull myself back, no, don't do that. And look, honestly, I was out of there in 3 days. The nurse came in on the third day and said to me, you don't even look like you should be here. And I said, I don't feel like I should be here. And she said, let's get you home. And I said, yes, please. So I went home and honestly, I just saw it as a really minor thing. It was tiny. And it was like a little bit of a slight inconvenience. I was out of action for a while. But you know, after 4 months, I was back to teaching yoga. I had to do a bit of physio. There's a bit of work to be done. But, you know, I just took it in my stride this time instead of making this huge mountain out of it. And it really made a massive difference. And I think, you know, through that life experience, actually experiencing and realising it, that, you know, now when I deal with problems, I deal with them quite differently to how I have previously. And it's all because of this knowledge. You know, it's wonderful, you know, and now it's a challenge. If something goes wrong in my life, I think, bring it on. Yes. This is going to be a great lesson. It's something I can learn from and grow from. So, you know, instead of looking negatively now, I look at the positives of it. Yeah, I can improve, and how I deal with things, and the outcomes are better. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Yeah. So that's the first thing. That's the biggest key point. Another thing, sorry, I shouldn't have had that chai. Soy milk affects me. So another thing that we get from this knowledge is that if we view everyone with equal vision, and if you are seeing yourself as a spiritual being and not this body, you're also going to be seeing other people as a spiritual being within a body. Yeah? So we're actually all equal. No one's better than anybody else. We're all eternal spirit souls, and we're all in different bodies and going through different situations due to our previous karma, our previous, choices and the way we've lived our lives in the past. But ultimately, we're all equal. So there's a really nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita, text 18, chapter 5. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast. So when we're saying, you know, everybody's a living being within a body, that includes animals and plants and insects and everything, spiders, fish, everything that is showing signs of life is a living entity within a body. And we have to, when we sort of understand this, then the next point is being empathetic. You know, we can show empathy towards others. We're more likely to be showing empathy towards others when we know that they're not the body, that we're not the body, and that everybody in this world is suffering. We're all suffering here because it's not our home. We're not meant to be here. But we're all in this situation now, so we're going to try and make the best of it and get out of this situation that we've got ourselves into. So we can be more empathetic by realising, gosh, you know, we've all got our own problems that we're dealing with. No one's any worse than anybody else. We're all facing problems in life constantly. I remember seeing a little video that popped up in Facebook once, and it was, I'm sorry I didn't save it. I would have played it tonight. I tried to find it, but it's like, how do you find that? It's a needle in a haystack. I don't even remember the title, but it was it was a video of all these people walking through a hospital, and they were all workers, or they were people checking themselves into hospital, or visiting people in hospital, and they had these little bubbles, and they were just going about their day, and they were sort of, you know, connecting with some people and saying hello and goodbye, and, you know, and most of them had like worried looks on their faces and things, and it's like, when this guy just found out that he's got cancer, this guy's just lost his wife, you know, this person just lost their job, this person, you know, there's just one after the other, and you go, yeah, everybody's going through the same thing as me. Really, it's different variations, but they're all going through they've all got their own problems. So when we have this view of the sage, the great sages, that they see everybody as equal, a spirit soul going through a human experience or an animal experience, if they're animals, they're going through an experience in this body, in their body in this lifetime, and there's all problems, all suffering and distress connected to that body, that event, that lifetime. So we can become more empathetic and realise that everybody has a story to tell. Everyone has their own problems and hardships to deal with, so we can be, you know, we can sort of feel more empathy for others rather than attacking. I don't know if you've been here before when I've told this story, but I remember hearing a story about there was a guy catching a train, and he had 3 little kids. He was on one of the carriages, and the kids were just running riot. You know, little kids, they'd run riot anyway, but he wasn't trying to control them. And they were just running up and down and screaming and laughing and rolling on the ground, making a heck of a noise. And there was another person in the carriage, and this guy was getting really angst about it, you know, because this guy wasn't controlling his children. And as the guy went to get off, the angst guy went to get off the train, he said to the guy, "What the hell are you doing, letting those kids run riot like that? You should be controlling your children." And this guy said to him, "I'm sorry," he said, "I just learned that my wife died from cancer, and I've got to now tell them that they don't have a mother." You know, so he was giving them the last bit of fun before they found out that they lost their mother, you know. So yeah, we can be more empathetic towards others, realising that, you know, we all deal with our problems in different ways. Some people get more angry about them, some just get more depressed. We're all dealing with problems, yeah. And another point is to, rather than looking for fault in others, turn that and redirect it on yourself. So you've got plenty yourself. You've got too many to deal with to be looking at faults in others. You shouldn't be. If you were perfect, it might be a different matter. But as Jesus said, why are you looking at the log in another person's eye? No, why are you looking the splinter in another person's eye when you've got a log in your own? Yeah. So we've got plenty of faults that we should be seeing and trying to improve on, rather than, you know, looking at others and seeing their faults. It's actually a really, really detrimental thing in spiritual life to be seeing the faults of others. It's a no-go. We need to be just totally non-judgmental and non-critical about others. My spiritual master, Jagat Guru, once said that there's 2 ways that we can be completely successful in our spiritual life. And one is to not judge or criticise others, and the other is to chant lots, chant sincerely. And if you can do those 2 things in life, even if you do nothing else, that will get you back to the spiritual realm. That will guarantee success. That's how important it is that we don't judge or criticise others. And the 5th one, meditate a lot. Because the meditation is going to purify your consciousness, and all these things are just going to fall into place. But we can be cultivating, we can be simultaneously meditating and cultivating these wonderful virtues and this spiritual vision. And you'll find that, you know, your life will everything will just start to fall into place, and you'll be living a much calmer and more peaceful life, and you won't have the same problems. As it says here, there's still going to be problems, but the sage is not nearly as disturbed as the materialist. So we want to become less disturbed, and we can do that by acquiring spiritual knowledge and practicing our meditation on a regular basis. So what do you reckon?
Sounds good.
I think every Sunday when I speak, it gives me inspiration to, I'm just going to make some improvements this week. Because I asked Charitas once, a friend of mine, I said, how can I become a better speaker? And he said, just do it. Because he said, you're hearing yourself, you're more, hearing yourself more attentively than anybody else. And it's true. I go home and I go, I'm speaking this. I've got to make sure I walk the walk, not just talk the talk, Because I think people can see through it if you're just talking the talk and not doing the walk. It goes together, yeah? So, anyone have any questions?
I'm still coming to grips with this, your spirit soul not being part of your mind, that's all.
Yeah. Well, that'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come with a purified consciousness. So the more you practice the meditation, the more it will become apparent to you. Yeah. We're very connected to our mind and body, and we have been for many, many lifetimes. It's described that it could be millions. It may have been here millions and millions of lifetimes. So there's a lot of conditioning that we've been through. So it's not an overnight process. It's going to take time.
I know that I'm a spiritual person, but it's my mind that I think is making me a spiritual person, not the other way around. I mean, that's where I'm at the moment. Yeah, so you've heard the description from the Vedas, how we're actually a spiritual being, and then we're covered by the subtle mind and then the gross physical body. Yeah, but we're very interconnected with the mind, so it's almost like the mind, is us. I can understand that a lot of people have that idea. But it'll become more apparent, and it's easier once you know that you're not the mind and you realise that. Much easier to deal with the mind. Yeah. But just take your time, there's no rush. Just keep doing what you're doing. And you can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. It'll happen in its own sweet time. And we can't rush these things either. Our spiritual life is, it's like you plant a tree and if you plant a tree and you give it too much water and too much, fertilizer, and it'll grow really quickly, but the roots will be shallow. And then it'll fall over in the first storm, whereas if you plant a tree and you just give it a little bit of fertilizer, a little bit of water as it needs it, then the tree will go really slowly, but it'll have deep roots. Nothing will knock it over. So take your time.